All righty. Good evening. Um, hopefully, hopefully you are there. Yeah, I'm a little discombobulated here. But anyways, good evening and welcome to Life After 55, Health, Wealth, and Headlines. I am glad to see you here. If you are here live, great. Hopefully you can hear me. Hopefully this microphone is set up. I kind of ran in here last minute. So I'm not sure, but I think everything is working. Anyways, if you are watching this live, I am really glad you are here. And if you are catching the replay, you are just as welcome as anybody who is here right now. Um, Tonight's show is it's one of those conversations that people usually have too late. And it's not because the information is not available, but because no one put it together in one place for people to access. So that's what I'm trying to accomplish here. Also, you may notice my background over here. It's a picture. I live in eastern North Carolina, and we don't get much snow here. It rarely snows, and when it does, it doesn't snow much more than maybe an inch, maybe, an inch and a half, 2 inches, whatever. And then it warms up right away and it melts right away. So that's pretty much been the extent of the snowfalls here. Well, this past weekend, we had a heck of a snowstorm, one that's very not common, very uncommon for these parts. We got like 13 inches of snow over here. So needless to say, they are not really equipped to deal with that here. So it's been a slow dig out. But that picture behind me there, I went out with my son like the next day after the snow stopped, and we just drove around to see, how the roads were and stuff. And that road behind me, I don't know if you can see that or not. I guess if I move that out of the way, you can see that. That's kind of a main road, and it was, covered with snow, packed snow and stuff. So today it was warm. It's been in the 40s, I think, or close to the 40s. So there was a lot of melting today. So the meltdown is taking effect now. But for the last few days, the temperatures have been super cold. Again, like I said, we had 13 inches of snow. So, anyways, that's what this background picture is. I just thought I would share that because, again, it's kind of unique. We don't get snow like that here very, very often. All right, getting back to what I was saying. Tonight, we are talking about what really starts changing around the age of 70. Whether you like that or not, it's just one of those facts of life that, it is what it is. And there's nothing really you can do about it except, live with it and try to make the best of it. And I mean, there's changes that happen physically, financially, and socially. So, in the health segment tonight, and by the way, the show is like the title says, health, wealth, and headlines. In the health segment, I am going to walk through 5 specific changes that happen to the body as we age, and these are things like balance, reaction time, muscle loss, bone strength, and something called proprioception. Okay. And a lot of people have never heard that. I personally hadn't heard that up until a couple weeks ago, which is what intrigued me to do this topic. But basically what that is it's your body's internal GPS. Okay. And all these changes happen quietly. Most people don't even notice that they're taking place until independence starts slipping away from you. And that's another reason I wanted to share all this with you, so that you would be aware of it, and you could, make plans to do, to kind of circumvent it or hold it off as much as you can. Um, by the way, I forgot I had a timer here that I didn't start. Oh well, I'm gonna have to live without it for this one. I got to definitely get this timer thing down. Anyhow, I'm going to share simple things you can start doing right now to slow down that process. And in the wealth segment, we are going to talk about money specifically whether financial independence is still realistic at this stage of life. We're also going to talk about something called FIRE, which stands for Financial Independence Retire Early. And most often that focuses on young people retiring early, utilizing things like cryptocurrency or what I refer to as the social media version of FIRE. But we're going to discuss FIRE with a little bit of a change. I redefine FIRE to FIRS, which stands for Financial Independence Retire Securely, FIRS. See, the other way, it's FIRE, FIRE, which is Financial Independence Retire Early, FIRE. And my version is FIRS, which is Financial Independence Retire Securely. But again, this is not the Instagram version of FIRE. The real one for those of us in the over 55 club, what I've defined as FIRS, where healthcare, taxes, and longevity actually matter. And last but not least, in the headline segment, we are going to talk about something that's hurting far too many seniors and families: online scams, including romance scams. And um, these are not rare. They're happening every single day, and they don't just steal money, they steal confidence, they steal dignity, and they steal trust. So, if you are over 55 or you care about someone who is, I really encourage you to stay with me tonight because this is not about fear. It's about staying upright, staying independent, and staying protected as long as possible. Okay, now that we've got that out of the way, um, let's get a little legal business out of the way before we start and get into all this by letting me do a quick disclaimer. I am not a doctor, medical professional, or a licensed financial advisor. Everything that I share tonight is for educational purposes only, based on my own research and personal experience. This is not medical or financial advice, and you should always check with your own healthcare provider or financial professional before making changes that affect your health or your finances. Okay? So, now that we have gotten that out of the way, let's get into this and let's start with health. Okay, again, these are the 5 things that start happening, at the age of 70, and sometimes, give or take a few years, it might happen before that. Um, One of the first things that starts to go at 70 is your balance starts to fail, okay? And this, does not happen overnight, and it's not a dramatic, like, suddenly you just don't have any balance. This is a gradual buildup slowly and quietly. And the reason this happens is inside your head, there are tiny fluid filled canals that tell your brain which way is up. Now, as we age, those systems get weaker. In turn, the signals to your brain get fuzzy. And you might still walk fine, but your stability is already changing. So if you are not sure, um, if this is affecting you yet or not, you can try a simple thing you can try sometimes. Stand up, close your eyes, and see if you can stay balanced for 10 seconds. So close your eyes and count 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, and so on till you hit 10. If you are over 70 and if that's difficult for you, your balance system is already compromised. So why does that matter? A loss of balance is one of the biggest predictors of falls. In other words, if your balance is off, you're gonna face plant one of these days. Um, and falls are often the beginning of a loss of independence. I mean, if you have no balance, you're gonna wind up in a walker or with somebody, holding you all the time, and it's a loss of your independence. It's the start of that. Okay, but all is not lost. There are things that can help you. Balance is a skill, and skills can be trained. Okay. Something as simple as standing on one foot while you're brushing your teeth it can retrain your brain. So you know, if your balance is compromised, try that starting tomorrow or whatever. Um, you know, start with 10 seconds while you're brushing your teeth. Stand there and you know, at least you've got the counter, the bathroom counter right there that if you start to lose your balance, you can grab onto that so you're not going to fall. But start with that. Try brushing your teeth standing on one leg, you know, and if switch to to your other leg, you know, if possible. And then keep doing that till you can do it for 30 seconds. That is going to help you tremendously. Okay. You know, and when I said in the beginning of this little chat here, this little rant here, um, I told you that one of the reasons that this happens is because we have these little canals in our head, and those tell your brain what's up, what's down, and all that, you know. Um, and it reminds me of like when I was in the military, we had this thing we had to do, and it was this dunk tank thing, and it just sort of reminded me of that because these canals, like I said, tell your brain what is up. And I remember when we had to do this dunk tank thing, the instructors told us, you know, when you get under there, when you go, you know, you basically you slam into the water and you're underwater and you're all discombobulated. And they tell you, you know, that's what's going to happen. And they tell you you need to look up, you know, at the bubbles that, you know, blow out some bubbles and watch which way the bubbles are going because the bubbles are always going to rise to the surface and that's up. So again, when we get older, those systems get weaker and, you know, those bubbles get a little bit, you know, smaller or whatever and they get a little fuzzy on their way to your brain to tell you, you know, about your balance, what's up, what's left, what's right, what's down. So you're like I said, your stability is changing, but it's just something that I remembered when I was doing this, and I thought I would share that. Whether hopefully that didn't bother you for me sharing that. But again, you want to, you know, if you do feel your balance is compromised, you know, start with, like I said, start with brushing your teeth and hold and doing it on one leg, you know, standing on one leg try for 10 seconds, you know, try switching legs and do both legs for 10 seconds each, you know, see if you can do that. And then eventually work your way up to 30 seconds on both legs. You'd be surprised. It'll help. Okay, next thing that starts to go down the wrong highway is your reaction time starts to slow. And again, it's not just you, it's one of those things that happens with age. Um when you're younger, something starts to fall and your hand just automatically moves to catch it or stop it from falling or whatever. Now, as you get older, you see things like the same circumstance, you see something fall and you just watch it hit the floor. Excuse me. It's not clumsiness. You know, your nervous system it slows down with age. Signals take longer to travel. That's just the way it is. Okay? And why does that matter? Well, reaction time affects a lot of things. For example, driving. um, catching yourself during a stumble. If you're starting to fall and your reaction time is slow, you know, you might not catch yourself in time and you may wind up on the floor or worse yet on a concrete sidewalk or something like that or a stair or tumbling down the stairs or you know something horrible like that. Um you know, your reaction time it affects everyday safety for you. Now, here's another thing. If you're still driving, imagine your, reaction time is not what it was when you were 16, when you were 20, when you were 30. Um, it's slowed down. So imagine you're driving your car and, you know, you're going down a street and suddenly, you know, a kid comes out from behind a car or whatever after whatever he's after a ball or whatever. You know, your eyes, you see it but it goes to your brain that, "Hey, there's a kid in the road. I need to stop or swerve around or whatever to avoid hitting this kid." But the message doesn't get to your leg, to your foot to brake, as fast as it would if you were 16 or whatever. And that's what I mean about it affects your everyday safety, because if you are driving, that is a hazard, and you need to, hopefully not run into that circumstance. And that's just an everyday thing. There's a lot of other things that I could use as examples, but just to give you an idea, if let's say when you're, so I don't know, 20 years old, 30 years old, your reaction time when you see something like that when you're driving is like, let's say it's a half a second or whatever. Wait, by the time you see the kid and it registers in your brain to tell your foot to put the brakes on, it's a half a second. When you're 70, in your late 60s, 70s, and older, that time is now, a full second or a second and a half or whatever. And just to give you an idea, if you were going 45 miles an hour, a car travels 66 feet in 1 second. Okay. So again, if you're reacting in half of that time, half a second, you've only gone 33 feet. If it takes you a second and a half, now you've gone 99, pretty much 100 feet before you stop, which could be life or death for the kid in the road, and again, this is something horrible that hopefully doesn't happen to anybody, and it's that's listening to this, but it's just something to keep in mind, um, so what can we do to help that? um, Again, a lot of these things, all of these things that I'm talking about tonight can be retrained or trained, period. Start with things like catching a ball. Even if you have nobody to catch a ball with, you can bounce a ball off the garage or the basement wall or something. And I'm not talking, a giant basketball or whatever. I just, a little rubber ball or something, tennis ball, something like that. Simple hand-eye games. Even if certain video games, a lot of guys, I personally don't play them, but I know a lot of people do play video games, including people our age, which kind of surprises me. But hey, God bless you, I kind of wish I got into it, but I don't really have time to do that anyways. But neither here nor there. Hang on 1 second. I need to mute my mic. All right. Hopefully you didn't hear that, but I had to cough. For those of you who don't know, I have COPD, and every now and then, um, it acts up, and I have to clear my throat and cough. Anyhow, hopefully you did not hear that. But anyhow, getting back to what I was saying, a lot of people play video games, and those are good for hand-eye coordination. And a lot of those things, things like that, like I said, a simple just catching a ball, it helps with your hand-eye coordination, which helps, retrain your system to react faster. And again, video games certainly do that too, because I know I've seen a lot of people play video games. I watch videos of people playing video games sometimes. That's a whole different story, because there's this one person that I watch that he's like one of the most hated people on the internet, but that's another story for another day. But that's how I watch people playing video games. And anyways, I know it does. And my son plays video games, and I know it takes hand-eye coordination. And the older you get, the slower you are. But if you are playing games on your own or with other people or whatever, God bless you, and you are working on, your hand-eye coordination, which is great. Okay. All right. That's number two. Number three. Here's something we've talked about. I've talked about in prior videos that I've done when I was doing the Life After 55 videos before I was doing this live stream. We did a couple of these, and there's something called sarcopenia, which is muscle loss. And this is the third change. This one sneaks up on a lot of people. After about age 50, most people lose about 1% of muscle mass per year. Now, after 70, that loss accelerates. And just to give you an idea, here are some key statistics regarding muscle loss or sarcopenia. And this is after 50. So after 50, muscle mass loss is roughly 1 to 2% per year. Okay. So, if you're doing 1% per year after 50, by the time you hit 60, you've lost 10% of your muscle mass. Um, Between the ages of 65 and 80, this can amount to 8% per decade. Okay. Your strength declines by 1.5% annually between 50 and 60, and that accelerates to 3% or more after you hit the age of 60. Total impact. By the age of 70, a person may have lost nearly 25% of the muscle mass that you had at age 30. All right. So, loss of speed, balance, and strength increases the risk of falls, fractures, and frailty. Okay. And muscle loss doesn't just mean weakness, it means difficulty standing up, carrying groceries, climbing stairs, and doing a lot of just everyday things. Why does that matter? Well, when your muscles weaken, again, independence shrinks. You're on your way to not being independent anymore. And I think that's one of the biggest fears everybody in this age group has is losing your independence. I remember when my dad, we had to take the car keys away from him because he was at that age where he was having accidents and, he was going to either get killed or wind up killing somebody or injuring somebody else. So we had to take the car keys from him and it was kind of heartbreaking, when you're young and you have to do that to a parent, it's kind of heartbreaking. But when you get to that age, you start realizing why they put up such a fuss because they're losing their independence. Um, but the good news is muscles respond to stress at any age, meaning um, you can use things, working out. And again, I'm not talking about an Arnold Schwarzenegger, go to the gym and become Mr. Olympia or Mr. America or whatever the heck they are called, whatever their titles are. I'm talking about using things like resistance bands, doing things like chair squats, wall push-ups where you just lean against the wall and just do push-ups off the wall. 15 minutes a day can make a real difference. And again, on top of all that, you should always try to walk. If in fact you are mobile enough to walk, you should try and get some walking in. And again, I am the biggest one who is guilty of not walking. So I don't want you to think that I'm yelling or ranting and raving at you for not walking because I personally don't walk as much as I should, and I'm trying. That's one of my things this year is to walk more than I have been, um, and to try to make that part of a normal routine. All right, moving right along now. This is number 4. Bones become brittle. This is osteoporosis or bone loss or whatever. Bones slowly lose density. They become porous and fragile. And often this happens without any pain or without any warning. You don't even know it's happening. An important reality that could surprise you is a lot of hip fractures don't happen because of the fall. Now, this one kind of surprised me when I was doing the research for this. Again, a lot of hip fractures don't happen because of the fall. The bone breaks first and then the fall follows. And like I said, that one surprised me. I always thought it broke because you fell, but no, a lot of times that isn't the case. And, why does that matter? Well, a single fracture can change everything in your life now. Your mobility is going to be gone, your confidence, even your long term health is going to be compromised because if you have to lay in bed every day, you're going to wind up with bed sores and all kinds of things that you don't want. And, then it's going to be harder for you to rehabilitate and learn to walk again or use your arm or whatever the case might be that broke. Um, but again, this is like the muscle mass. What helps is bones respond to stress just like muscles do. And as long as you're doing the right kind, weight bearing movement. And again, this is, doing something like dumbbells. Well, you've seen people walking with those little dumbbells and stuff. Things like, that. Strength training, again, not an Arnold Schwarzenegger, all out workout, just what you can handle comfortably, just so that you're doing something, you know, um, doing balance work and then proper nutrition and there are supplements too, I'm sure we all know about those. You need calcium for stronger bones and stuff. And, if you're not a milk person or whatever, then, there are calcium supplements or whatever. All right. And I'm running late now. Um, and last but not least, as far as the health segment goes, is we have something called proprioception. Oh, what did I say? It's proprioception. That's what it is. Proprioception. This is something that a lot of people haven't heard of, including me. I didn't hear about this until about 2 weeks ago when I first started doing the research for this. And proprioception is, simply put, it's your body's internal GPS. It's telling your brain, it's where your hands and your feet are, without you having to look. More specifically, proprioception, often called the sixth sense, is the body's subconscious ability to sense its own position, movement, and location in space without relying on sight. It uses receptors in your muscles, your joints, and your skin to facilitate balance, coordination, and automatic movement, which enables actions like walking without having to look at your feet. Okay. As we age, that internal map gets less accurate. You think you lifted your foot high enough, for example. You didn't. Why does that matter? This is why people trip over things they can see. Okay. Proprioception can be retrained. Improving your balance requires a mix of static, which means standing still, and dynamic exercises that challenge your body's proprioceptors. All right. So let's go over a few of these. These are beginning static exercises for somebody who's not, somebody who's a beginner. A single leg stance. Um, Stand tall and lift one foot off the ground. Hold your foot off the ground for 20, 30 seconds and then switch sides. You can use a sturdy chair or a countertop for support if you need to. Then we have you can do what's called a tandem stance. This is where you place one foot directly in front of the other, heel to toe, like you're standing on a narrow line. Now just hold that for 30 seconds. Then we have something you can do called the tree pose. This is where you shift your weight onto one leg and place the sole of your other foot on your inner calf or thigh, if you can do that. Avoid doing that on your knee. Don't press against your knee. Press your palms together at your chest and hold that for a couple seconds. Okay, now we have intermediate exercises that you can do once you master those. Heel to toe walking, walk in a straight line like they do, when they're pulling people over for DWI or whatever. Walk in a straight line, placing your heel directly in front of your toes with each step. Focus on a fixed point in the distance to stay steady. Then we have something, it's called the clock reach. You can stand on one leg and imagine you're in a center of a clock. Okay. Reach your other foot towards 12, 3, 6, and 9 without letting it touch the floor. Kind of difficult, but we can all master these things. Sit to stand. Sit in a sturdy chair and stand up slowly without using your arms for help. For a harder challenge, try doing that on one leg. Might be a little harder than we think. All right, then there's also advanced challenges. Closing your eyes. Close your eyes and perform any of the static exercises I just talked about. And try doing any of those with your eyes closed. Once you master them, with your eyes open, that's going to force your brain to rely entirely on proprioception instead of your vision. Now, unstable surfaces. Practice balancing on a pillow, a foam pad, or a Bosu balance trainer to engage deep core stabilizers. Now, you may be asking, what in the world is a BOSU balance trainer? Oh, well, I'm glad you asked because I did not know what that was either. So I looked it up, I researched it, and I found out a BOSU balance trainer is a versatile dome shaped fitness device invented in 1999 that combines an inflated rubber hemisphere with a rigid, flat platform, originally standing for both sides up. It's used for balance, strength, flexibility, and cardio training, engaging stabilizer muscles through its inherent instability. And if you look up a BOSU trainer, you'll see what it looks like. I didn't have time to get a picture of it, but you can see what basically it's this round thing, and it kind of looks like it's got a dome shaped balloon or something rubbery on top. And I guess when you sit on that thing and you try to balance on it, it's difficult, and makes you work those muscles more. All right. Um, Single leg deadlifts. You can hinge forward at the hips while standing on one leg, extend your other leg behind you while you reach toward the floor. And again, you'd have to be pretty mobile for a lot of these, but if you are so inclined, then these are things you can do to help your balance and everything, and help your proprioception. Um, Try to incorporate at least 10 minutes of these exercises into your daily routine if possible. You know, um, None of these changes mean that you're broken. They mean your body needs different care than it did before. Strong reassurance that you're not helpless. These systems can be trained. All of what I just said can be trained. Um, you can be strengthened. You can be recalibrated. Pick two or three of the exercises. Do them every day. Small habits create massive differences over time. And again, this is not going to be an overnight thing, just like everything else that I've talked about in prior videos. Um, but they do make a difference, and you will see and you'll appreciate it after you get to see for yourself the big difference. All right. So health is one pillar of independence. The next one is money. And just like the body, finances change with age, whether we prepare or not. Now, everything we just talked about in the health segment comes down to one thing: independence. Balance, strength, reaction time, those all determine whether you can live life on your own terms. But there's another side of independence that matters just as much, and that's money. Because even if your health is good, financial stress can take away freedom just as fast as a fall or an injury can. All right. And that brings us to a question I see a lot of people over 60 quietly asking, but rarely out loud. And that's, can financial independence still work at this stage of life? Or is it already too late? Now, you've probably heard the term FIRE somewhere along the line. And that stands for, the FIRE. It stands for Financial Independence Retire Early. So, first of all, forget the social media version of FIRE. That's the one with 30-year-olds and they're talking about crypto and beach laptops and la di da, la di di. For people over 60, 50, or 70, FIRE means something very different. At this stage, financial independence isn't about retiring early, it's about retiring secure. It means your bills are covered, your income is predictable, you're not forced to sell assets at the wrong time, and you're not lying awake at night worrying about money. In other words, your money is working for you and not the other way around. So the real question is not, can I retire early? The real question is, can I retire without fear? And for a lot of seniors, the answer depends less on how much money they have and more on how their money is structured, how much they lose to taxes, and how prepared they are for longer life and higher healthcare costs. Now, one thing I want to be very clear about: fire at this stage of life is not about extreme frugality or risky bets. It's about how your money is structured, not just how much you have. So, with that said, can fire work for seniors? You bet. Fire can work for seniors, though the focus now typically shifts from early retirement to achieving financial independence as quickly as possible. Redefining early for someone in their 60s, retiring at 65 or 67, could be considered early if the original plan was to work into their 70s. Seniors often have higher earning potential and fewer major expenses, for example, child rearing, than younger people do, which can allow for a much higher savings rate. For 2026, those who are aged 50 and older can make catch up contributions to retirement accounts with limits reaching 8,000 for IRAs and 32,000 for 401ks. And that's for those who are age 60 to 63. So instead of the extreme lean fire that's often seen and heard on social media, seniors typically look at more practical variations. For example, quitting a high stress career for a part time job that provides social interaction and covers basic expenses while letting investments grow. Having enough saved so that no further contributions are needed. You simply work to cover current living costs until your official retirement age. Reducing expenses such as downsizing a home or cutting high interest debt dramatically lowers your fire number, which is the total savings needed to retire. Senior focused fire it's got to account for realities that younger followers often overlook. One of those is healthcare costs. If you're retiring before 65, private health insurance can be extremely expensive until Medicare eligibility. Now, there's what they have, the 4% rule, and that's based on a 30-year retirement. Seniors should be cautious of market volatility and rising healthcare or long-term care costs as they age. The 4% rule is a widely used guideline in retirement planning for determining a safe withdrawal rate from your savings portfolio so that your money has a high probability of lasting throughout your retirement. There's also physical changes around, age 70. Changes in balance, reaction time, and muscle mass can impact independence and potentially increase living costs. Those are the things we just talked about in the first segment. Regardless of age, the core fire lesson, living below your means to gain more power over your time, remains a valuable tool for anyone looking to secure their future. Now, that said, that's actually why I've been working behind the scenes on a structured course around buy, borrow, die, because this concept isn't just for the ultra wealthy. For folks over 60 and 70, it becomes a defensive strategy: how to reduce taxes, avoid unnecessary selling of assets, and making your money last. Now, I'm building this as a 10 module course, very plain English, step by step. Okay. No hype, no theory. Tonight isn't the place to teach that, but it absolutely ties into whether financial independence is still possible later in life. And before we get into this last segment, I just wanted to share something that came in from Facebook after I mentioned tonight's topic. Now, we're moving into the headline topic now. Um, and the topic is about scams, online scams that target seniors. Okay. One of the big ones is romance scams or love scams, whatever you want to call them. Okay. And one of the reasons I picked this topic to do for this segment was Valentine's Day is right, what, a week from Saturday, I believe. And it's a timely thing. And I got, excuse me, I got a message on Facebook. I had posted something about this show, tuning into this show tonight. And I posted the segment topics, the five things that change and the money thing, the fire thing, and then this topic for the headline topic, which is the scams, the love scams and everything. And actually, I didn't post love scams. I just posted scams. And then I got a message from somebody right after I posted that on Facebook. And it stuck with me. And that's why I'm kind of doing it with this kind of focus. All right. And this is the message from somebody named Sarah that I got on Facebook right after I posted a promotion to watch this live stream. And she wrote, "I'm not your target audience, but this is a wonderful resource. If you feel so inclined, please also teach them about online love scams. Our elderly community is being robbed daily in America, and it's awful." Now, that message, like I said, that stuck with me because she's right. This isn't a fringe issue. It isn't rare. And it isn't about intelligence. It's about timing, emotion, and trust. And with Valentine's Day coming up next week, it becomes even more important because this is the time of year when romance scams spike. And it's not because people are foolish, it's because people are human. You know, there are a lot of people who are lonely and don't have anybody in their life, and you get these hucksters or con men or highwaymen, as I call them, online now, that come along and just scam the heck out of people, which to me is despicable. Um, but it's I don't know. All right, so I'm going to talk about love scams and other scams that typically or specifically target seniors, how they work, the red flags to watch for, and how to protect yourself and the people you care about. This could be the most important part of tonight's show. So let us talk about it. Now, when we talk about financial independence later in life, most people think about markets, savings, taxes, but there's another threat to financial security that almost never shows up in retirement planning conversations. It's not inflation, it's not interest rate, it's people. Specifically, people who are very good at manipulating trust, emotion, and loneliness. And this matters even more right now because Valentine's Day is just around the corner. Around this time of year, scams targeting seniors spike. They do, they go through the roof, especially romance and love scams. And these are not rare cases, they happen every single day, and they don't start with money. They start with conversation, they start with attention, with someone saying the right things at the right time. And this is why scams belong in a conversation about financial independence. You can do everything right financially. You save, you invest, you plan, and you still lose years of security to a single, well executed scam. Not because you're careless, not because you're stupid, but because these scams are designed to bypass logic and go straight for emotion. Okay. So, again, this is not about blaming or embarrassing anybody. Romance scams or love scams or whatever you want to call them, they're also known as sweetheart scams or online dating fraud. These are all a type of confidence trick where fraudsters create fake online identities to build romantic or emotional relationships with victims, ultimately exploiting them for money or personal information, which they use to steal money down the road. These scams disproportionately affect older adults. Okay. Remember that. These scams disproportionately affect older adults, particularly those who are widowed, divorced, or living alone, as scammers prey on feelings of loneliness. And that's what I said a minute ago. You know, a lot of people are lonesome and they desire companionship. And here comes some huckster, some con man, some highwayman that starts, he gets you on a dating app or whatever and starts telling you, "Oh, you're beautiful, you're this, you're that." You know, and don't think I'm not part of this thing. It's happened to me. I get these things, especially like on Facebook and stuff. I get these, and it's mostly social media, and it is. I get these things on Facebook, and I don't know how they get my email. I guess my info's out on the dark web or whatever. But they'll get my info, and I get these emails, these messages from supposedly these girls who are like, "Oh, hey, handsome, I saw your profile, I saw your thing, blah blah blah. How about this, that, or?" And I'm like, "Wait a second, this girl in this picture looks like she's 21. Okay, I am in my late 60s. Why would a 21-year-old girl be interested in me?" That's the first thing that hits me. So I'm like, okay, you know, to me, the first thing you need to do when you start getting hit with things like this is use your gut feeling, especially women. They always told me growing up, and I believe this, women have that gut thing, that gut instinct that's much better than guys are. Um, and if it's telling you something's not right, listen to it. Listen to it. I mean, again, I don't have the best gut instinct, but I know as a 65 plus year old guy, when a 21-year-old girl hits me up online for something, I know it's a scam of some sort. It is. And I'm like, anyways, that's me. But I do understand where they hit you up for the desire of companionship. They know that you're seeking companionship, that you're lonely and everything. And that's the little wedge they use to get to you, and they'll tell you anything you want to hear. And the next thing you know, you've given them your life savings, and then they're never to be seen or heard from again. Um, according to reports, people who are age 70 and off and over that, they experience the highest financial losses with median amounts around 9,000 bucks or more in some years. Scammers don't just use dating apps, they also operate on social media, email, or even phone calls. Now, I've never gotten a phone call, thankfully, because one of the things is if I don't recognize the number, I don't answer it. And if it's something important, they will leave me a message. That's just, me. And I think that's a smart move, because nowadays you've got all kinds of, they can spoof phone numbers that, I don't know if you realize this or not, but a lot of times they'll call with, for example, if your area code is 404, which is an Atlanta area code, you'll get calls from, a 404 area code and you don't recognize the number because you haven't lived in Atlanta in years, and yet you're getting calls from Atlanta, and I never answer them and they never leave a message. And then when I look them up sometimes online, it tells me it's a scam. It's a robocall, it's an advertising call, it's a stupid call of some sort or another. Somebody trying to sell me a car warranty or something, it's just stupid stuff. So, they do use the phone, and again, with me, I don't know if I've ever gotten called on the phone. Probably I have because I get 100 of these a week. that I don't answer. They don't leave a message, so I know it's not important and it's just some garbage that somebody was trying to either scam me or sell me or whatever. But how these scams typically work, the higher level ones, and I'm talking romance scams now, they follow a predictable pattern, and they do. They all do. And it's designed to manipulate your emotions and to build trust over time. So, the first thing is the scammer creates an attractive fake profile on platforms like dating sites, like Match or eHarmony or any of the other ones that are out there now. I remember, wasn't eHarmony like the first one? I don't know. I was never into those, but anyhow, um, but I think eHarmony was like the first one, and I don't know. But anyhow, they use those sites and many others, I'm sure. They use Facebook. They use X or Twitter or whatever, and any other Instagram. Excuse me, and anything else social media wise they use um, to start communicating with you. Um, and they'll do it with unsolicited messages. Like suddenly you have a message. Like I told you, I get these messages sometimes from these 21-year-old Asian girls or girls in California, and I'm on the other side of the country. Um, and it's just I don't know. But they often will pose as successful professionals or military people or somebody abroad, and they'll initiate contact with flattery, with shared interests, or with sympathy, quickly escalating that to daily communication to foster a sense of intimacy. I remember now that I'm thinking about it, I had one of these, I don't know, a year or two ago, where this girl was telling me she would cook me this, that. What is my favorite meal? She would cook me this, that, and the other. And that's even if it was a girl. It's probably some guy pretending to be a girl, whatever. Um, but anyhow, they do. They just, they'll talk to you to foster a sense of intimacy. Um, and then the fraudster is going to shower you with affection, compliments, and declarations of love or commitment really early on, sometimes within a couple days or a week. And this creates a strong emotional bond, making the victim feel valued and connected. So, again, if you're somebody who's lonesome and one of these shysters or charlatans calls you or texts you or emails you or whatever and starts, bombing you with, oh, you're great, you're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen or guy or whatever, you know, then, they're going to start sharing fabricated stories about their life that are going to mirror your experiences, and they're going to exploit your vulnerabilities, like, if you've had a recent loss or if you were isolated and living alone. And then once they've gotten that trust and all that, they invent a crisis. 9 out of 10 times, they invent a crisis that requires urgent financial help. And some of the more common excuses include like they have a medical emergency, like their mom is dying of or cancer or heart disease or whatever, or they've got legal troubles. Somebody sued them, and even though they were in the right, they lost the case. And if they don't pay the, $10 zillion by tomorrow, they're going to be thrown in jail or, something stupid like that. Or they're going to say they need travel costs because they want to come and meet you in person, and they have business investments that they're going to sweep you off your feet and you're going to live happily ever after in Shangri-La. Um, or they're gonna, want money for family issues that, their son, they're in the process of helping their son, save his house from foreclosure or whatever. They're going to request funds via a wire transfer or a gift card or crypto or an app like Venmo or PayPal or something. Methods that are hard to trace or to reverse. Now, if you comply, the requests are going to keep coming and they're going to escalate until you run out of money. Now, to maintain control, these guys often discourage you from discussing the relationship with your family or your friends. They'll also avoid in-person meetings or video calls, They're going to use excuses like being overseas or they have technical issues, their computer's down today or something. If confronted, they could even gaslight you or disappear entirely, sometimes reappearing later on with new identities and new stories. These scams can last months or even years, and they can lead to significant financial and emotional harm. Scammers often operate in organized groups from overseas. They use stolen photos, they use AI generated images, they use scripted responses, a lot of things. Now, here's how to recognize the red flags. Spotting a romance scam early is key to avoidance. Okay. Here are some of the common warning signs, especially relevant for seniors. Okay. The first thing is a rapid emotional escalation. They profess love or deep feelings very quickly without having met you in person. That's a red flag. Next one is avoidance of face to face contact. They have constant excuses for not video calling, not meeting, or not sharing verifiable details about their life. They may claim to be working abroad, or they're in the military, or they're dealing with travel restrictions, or they're out on an oil rig, or whatever. Um, everybody's got FaceTime on their phone, whether you realize it or not, you do. You can FaceTime pretty much anybody in this day and age. So there's no excuse if they're who they say they are to, FaceTime with you if they like you like they say they do. Okay. Then they're going to request money or gifts. They're going to ask for funds no matter what the reason is, especially if it's urgent or involves untraceable methods like gift cards, wire transfers, or crypto. Legitimate partners don't need strangers to bail them out financially. Again, love doesn't cost any money. If I love you or whatever, you don't need to give me $1 million or $10,000 or 5,000 or whatever to show me that you love me, or you know what I mean? Um, and then there's inconsistent or specific or suspicious details. um, a lot of times you can look at their emails. There's very poor grammar and spelling, major spelling errors. That's because these are coming from guys that are in Nigeria or wherever who don't really know the English language. They do the best they can, I guess, and they don't really care because they do it to so many people. Mismatched stories. They claim to be a native English speaker, but they write so poorly. Something's not right there. They have a minimal online presence, generic photos that look like they're too polished, or reverse image search results showing the photos are stolen. It's like when you buy a wallet and you get the picture of the family in the wallet. That's not your family. That's kind of what they're doing online now. Um, Pressure. They also use pressure and isolation tactics. They push to move conversations off of the original platform. In other words, if you're emailing them, or if you're talking to them on Facebook or something, they want to go to email, or they want to go to WhatsApp, or something else, because they claim they need privacy to talk to you. And that's to discourage you talking to others about the relationship. You know, Most people would tell you, your close friends would say, I'd be careful, and that's what they're trying to avoid. They don't want you telling anybody else about this person you met online. All right. They might even create drama to keep you engaged emotionally. There's that old thing, if it's too good to be true, okay? Attractive, wealthy, adventurous personas that seem overly ideal, often with stories of hardship that tug at your heartstrings. You know, from a financial perspective, um, you watch for unusual transactions, sudden large withdrawals from your bank. If they've somehow or other gotten into your bank account, purchases of gift cards, or transfers to unknown parties. These could all indicate you've been had, basically. All right, so how do we prevent this and protect ourselves from this? Well, First of all, use reverse image searches. In other words, you can get on Google and get on Google profiles and see whose picture that is. Copy the picture. Excuse me. Ask for proof like a video call or, like I said, shared real time details. A FaceTime call, on your phone. How many people, whether you know it or not, you can FaceTime people on your phone. Um, if it's somebody legit, they wouldn't have a problem with that. You know, they wouldn't. All right. And make sure you stay on a secure platform. Keep communication on reputable dating sites with safety features and avoid sharing personal info early. Don't go telling them you live by yourself, you live at 123 Main Street, whatever. No, 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 no. Don't do any of that. Keep it mysterious. I guess that would be the best way to do it, right? All right, I'm way over now. I'm going late. Sorry, and I'm going to try to wrap this up real quick. Um, you know, share details of new online relationships with family or friends for an outside perspective. Never, ever, ever send them money. No legitimate online romance should involve financial requests. If they ask, report it immediately. Call the police, whoever, or, your family, somebody will help you. Um, regular talks about online safety can help. You know, I- you just got to keep monitoring your accounts, your dating apps, your bank, especially your banking accounts, financial accounts. Keep monitoring those for financial activity. If you suspect you've been scammed, report it to the FTC. And that's the website for that is the ftc.gov/compliant, or I'm sorry, complaint. And then the FBI also has a site for Internet Crime Compliance Center, and their website is ic3.gov. And on top of that, I would call the local police too. Now, there's organizations like the AARP, which I don't recommend to anybody, but if that's your thing, then go for it. And the National Council on Aging, who offer free resources and hotlines for support. And again, if it was me, I would stay away from AARP, but that's me. If that's your bag, then by all means, go for it. All right. So those are just some things to help you stay safe. Again, it's Valentine's Day coming up. Don't let any of these hucksters rob you blind or whatever. Um, you know, if it, like I said, if it's too good to be true, it more than likely is. Okay, so let's wrap it up because I'm way over time now. See, I didn't have my timer on. Um, and I babbled way too much. All right, I just want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you for spending part of your evening with me, and thank you for caring enough about your health, your finances, and your future to show up for conversations like this. If there is one takeaway from tonight, it's this: aging does not mean giving up control. It means getting more intentional. Okay, before we go to, I also want to put something out there real quick. We're actively looking for a female co host to join us on this journey. Someone thoughtful, curious, and comfortable having real conversations about health, money, aging, and life after 55. This is not about being an influencer. It is about perspective, balance, and connection. If that sounds like you or someone you know, please reach out to us. I'm going to put the email address in the comments below this video. Um, and again, if you're interested, reach out. This show isn't just about what we want to talk about. If there are topics you would like us to cover, questions you would like us to answer, or guests you think would add real value, drop that in the comments or shoot us an email. Again, I will put the email address down below. Pardon me. Okay. We do read the comments and they help shape future episodes, just like that comment from the lady on Facebook who talked about the elderly love scams. Um, Please follow us. If tonight's conversation was helpful, I'd really encourage you to stay connected with us. And you can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com /LA55HWH. You can also follow us on X, formerly Twitter, which is at Live After 55 Live, or subscribe to our YouTube channel at 55 Health Wealth. Following or subscribing helps make sure you don't miss future live shows, and it helps this community grow. And comments do that too. It helps the algorithm and everything. So please, comment, follow. As far as the Facebook page goes, we want to simulcast this on Facebook as well, because there, a lot of people have told us in the past they would prefer to watch this on Facebook as opposed to watching this on YouTube. Get it? Understood. We can't do that until we have a page that has 100 followers. As of now, I don't believe we have any followers. We might have one or two. We just made that page a couple of weeks ago. I encourage you to, if you do like the show, you want things answered, you want guests, topics covered, get on that page. Again, it's, Facebook. Let me see. Let me go back to it. Facebook.com/ LA55HWH. You should find our Facebook page there. If not, you can always email us, and I'll give you if that's not the correct address, I think it is. But I can always get you to the page so that you can follow. Once we have 100 followers there, we can start broadcasting this very show on Facebook. Okay. Now, our next live episode is going to be on February 17th, and we are going to continue building on these conversations around health, wealth, and staying independent after 55. I would love to see you back here for that one. Again, thank you, thank you, thank you for being here tonight. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and don't be afraid to have these conversations. They do matter. Okay? We will see you here next time. In the meantime, God bless. Take care of yourself. Bye bye.